Hey folks, your OS Reviews. You're watching our retro review of the original Surface, or the Surface RT, and in this video we'll also be discussing whether or not it's still a worthwhile tablet to pick up in 2016 and as we head towards the start of 2017. So of course this is an RT tablet, which means it can't run the legacy apps that we've come to expect from Windows computers. It's more like a mobile operating system in the way that Android is, although it's capable of doing full word processing as well as Excel and PowerPoint editing out of the box. So for instance, if I go to the browser, which is Internet Explorer by default, and I want to, let's say, download Chrome, you'll run into the problem of saying, oh, it's actually not supported. It also doesn't support things like AdBlock. So a lot of the software that I've come to expect is actually not going to be fully working on this, although there are workarounds found at the App Store. So we're going to take a closer look at the hardware first. In terms of specifications, again, we have that 10.1-inch screen, which is a fairly generous size. In terms of pricing, this thing was originally priced at $500 for the 32GB version, and you can now pick it up online for about $80 to $90 secondhand on Amazon or eBay, which I think is a reasonable price for a 10-inch tablet. But still, again, you are limited in terms of apps as well as productivity. Still, the build quality here is top-notch. In terms of specs, we have a Tegra 4 processor, 2 gigs of DDR3 RAM, and again, that memory which can be expanded using a micro SD card slot. It does have a aluminum alloy frame, just like all the Surfaces and the current Surface Pros, and comes compatible using that serial port connector, magnetic connector for keyboards and accessories that you can still find today. So taking a closer look next, we have access on the sides here to things such as the speaker, which one is found on this side, one is on the other side. These are stereo speakers. It's very loud, very rich, and one of the best sounding speakers I've tested on any tablet, which is quite impressive. There's also access to a 3.5mm headphone jack, dedicated volume rockers, which are very responsive and tactile. On the bottom, the aforementioned accessory magnetic port. The other side features access to the magnetic charging port, also proprietary, and there's also a full-size USB 2.0 port for connecting hard drives and flash drives. There is a micro HDMI connector, and on the back there's that classic aluminum alloy shell with the Microsoft logo underneath the kickstand, which has only one angle on this model. There's access to some more details about this specific tablet, in addition to a hidden micro SD card slot, which you can pop in on the side there to expand the memory. And of course, there's access to that 5-megapixel rear-facing camera with autofocus along with an LED, and there's also dual microphones for also noise cancellation if you're doing phone calls. With that being said, the camera here really isn't that great, although it's going to work for some quick snapshots in emergency cases and maybe sharing a few of those pics to show social messaging. I'll show you guys that later on, but again, it's not really anything to write home about. So turning this thing over, again, it's a huge fingerprint magnet, and you don't have to tap on the power key actually to turn it on. You can simply tap on the Windows key there once. There's haptic feedback, which means it vibrates, and then the tablet itself is on. It's an IPS panel, which means that colors themselves are quite vibrant and bright. With that being said, viewing angles aren't the best, and it's also not the richest looking panel. Again, it's a 720p version, and not 1080p like the Surface 2, so it could be a little better. With that being said, it's more than usable, as you can see here, just for watching videos and for browsing the web. It's also quite sensitive. So we're going to take a quick look at the camera first, which you can just access by sliding down, and it takes a few moments to load up. The interface here is pretty standard, so if you use any Windows 8, 8.1, or a RT tablet in the past, you'll know what it's like. So if we have something we want to take a quick image of, perhaps just something in front of this, and you can see that the field of view here isn't very large, so it's quite narrow. However, it does focus very quickly, and once you tap on something, it takes the shot once it becomes in focus. And then I can look at my images just by sliding to the left. Otherwise, there's also access to things like changing to the video recording mode, as well as setting a timer and switching to the front camera, which is more meant for Skype calls, as you can see there. And it is a decent front-facing camera, so good enough to use even under challenging, darker environments, which is nice to see. The menu interface here is very similar to any Windows 8 or 8.1 device that you might have. So there's these tiles which are represented as mobile versions of apps. So things like Internet Explorer, as well as the Microsoft Store, File Manager, there's OneDrive, and a desktop view. If I want to access all my applications, I slide down to take a closer look at those, and it's a pretty clean install since, again, this is a Microsoft tablet. Although notably, since it's also running on RT, as Microsoft was pushing back in the day, you have access to a full version of Office editing, such as Word, PowerPoint, Excel, OneNote for free. So that's one of the reasons why consumers might want to pick an RT tablet over, let's say, a full version of Windows, which could also be a bit more expensive back then. There's also things like for math input, so you can write equations, basic programs like Notepad, Paint, or remote desktop connection, all those things that you might find on a regular Windows computer are present here. And overall, the experience as far as navigating through the UI, you can see here, is also very lucid and smooth, just like with any Windows 8, full Windows 8 computer. So no problems there. I can slide to the right here to access a quick launch shortcut for time and date information, going back and forth between devices, setting it up, as well as for the power status. And I can slide to the left here to go through multitasking. So if I have another app open, I can slide between that to access that, and then slide it to the right to maybe open. So here is a quick example of that split screen multitasking experience at work. Now, one of the issues of having a Windows RT tablet is that it only runs limited apps as well as mobile apps from the Microsoft Store, which is a dwindling catalog that can't really match the Android and iOS experience. And as a result, if you're looking for a great web browsing experience, even though Internet Explorer suffices, and there's plenty of folks who love the Microsoft ecosystem, they're tied into their email system as well as for maybe video watching and for Skype. If you're someone who uses Google services like YouTube or Google Docs, it becomes a bit more not as fast and responsive as something like Chrome. And there's also a few other apps that you might want to install, but you'll realize that you can't once you switch over to something like a RT tablet, such as a Surface. With that being said, it's more than reliable and it gives you a decent web browsing experience. Everything is smooth and responsive as far as multitasking and pinching in and out. Web pages are fairly quick to load as well, so we had no issues there. But if you do want to play back something like a very demanding 1080p HD video from YouTube and also be multitasking and opening several different email as well as PowerPoint documents in the background, it's going to get slower. It does work decently if you're using it for a bit of light gaming. So if you have some games downloaded from the Microsoft Store, such as perhaps Sonic Dash is an example, it does work pretty well. Load up times are a little bit slower than an Android tablet with comparable specs, but all in all, it does run very smoothly. So that's nice to see here. Battery life is a huge plus on the Surface, and it still is here in 2016, 2017. This thing can last for around 8 hours on one charge. And again, it doesn't get hot and there's no fan running in the background, so it's completely silent and remains a great companion if you're traveling and you don't want to tug around something extremely powerful and heavy. So this is a good alternative to that. So doing a quick test of the maybe web browser first, we have access here to a mobile version of Internet Explorer launched through those tile interface, and you can see here that kinetic scrolling, everything works great. I can tap on a text box here and it's going to bring up the virtual keyboard, which supports multi-touch, which means that you can tap on multiple keys at the same time to get a very fast typing experience. It also means that if you tap on secondary keys like a control key, you can still access the keyboard and tap on functions. Otherwise, if I exit out of this version of Internet Explorer and go back to the desktop, there's another version, which is the more classic version you find on a PC. This version is a bit more clunky just because the desktop view doesn't automatically push up the keyboard here. So for instance, if I want to type on something like this text box, I have to manually tap on the virtual on-screen keyboard to bring that up. And it seems to load pages as slightly slower than that mobile version, which is something I've noted in testing, but it still does a respectable job and perhaps will work better if you're opening up a few more demanding, pages such as Google Docs, or if you have Gmail open and you have to also reply to someone's messages a lot, you want to navigate up and down, left and right in a more traditional view, this is probably the better option. So that's the web browsing experience on here. Of course, there's also access to the standard array of all your productivity apps such as Word, Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint, so on and so forth down below, which I can then tap on and start working on. Of course, since it's the Surface, it does have access to quite a few accessories, which are great. One of those is the touch type keyboard or the type keyboard, which you can snap on magnetically and allow this to be a great companion to word processing and to replying to longer emails and messages. So there's no issues there. There are a few programs I want to quickly point out. There is Hyper for YouTube, which is as close to a mobile version of a YouTube app that you'll find on the limited Microsoft Store here. So it does a decent job of loading back YouTube videos at a high resolution, and it plays back more smoothly as well as in a more optimized format than just using the browser itself. So that's a decent alternative. However, it's not going to be great if you're a content creator. So if you're someone who wants to constantly edit as well as change things like the title of a video and also the description, you can't actually do that here. You have to use the browser, which again is a bit clunkier than even some comparable Android tablets I've tried. So that's one of the limitations there. Otherwise, you have access to a few preloaded games as well. There's Microsoft services. A few of Nokia's apps have also influenced the presence of the Surface default applications here, because you can download them directly from the store. And if we take a quick look at some games on here, for instance, such as Sonic Dash. This should give you guys a good idea of how maybe 3D games would work on here. And of course, you can download a few more titles. More mobile titles will work on here just fine, which is one of the benefits of RT. But again, you are limited to these, and you don't have access to the more general as well as the legacy apps that we typically associate with Windows computers and PCs. So again, the loading times are a bit longer. We have a good idea of how the screen is like. It gets fairly bright, but under direct sunlight, it does still wash out. And the speakers on here are very powerful. They are one of the loudest speakers I've heard and tested on any tablet. So that is one of the benefits here. So it's definitely a very loud speaker that fills up spaces very well. So if you're watching videos, it's one of the benefits here. It's extremely loud again, and also quite clean sounding, which is great. So again, games themselves are very smooth to load. There's no stuttering or delay, so that's a nice thing that you'll find on here. And definitely, does a decent experience as far as mobile gaming is concerned. Again, there's no access to those legacy PC games, however. One other thing that is missing on here is support for playing back DVD videos. So if you are someone who wants to connect by USB a optical drive, unfortunately you can't do that here. So you're going to be missing that ability to load up something like Windows Media Player and play back videos directly. You can download VLC, but sometimes it's a hit or miss in our testing. So that's the original Microsoft Surface, a rather iconic piece of hardware that continues to shape the way the current Surfaces are in terms of design and also hardware. It's extremely solid. We love the kickstand as well as the aluminum design and the full-size USB port. And despite a few shortcomings in terms of the display as well as the cameras and also the processor not being the best of the best, it does still run quite smoothly. Obviously here in 2016 and 2017, I do think as a tablet you have better choices available, just because RT is not the most ideal choice unless you are just looking for a very mobile environment and you don't really care about those legacy apps, and you maybe are just getting something for quick web browsing and for a few quick video watching and editing. It's decent, but I still think something like Android as well as a regular Windows 8 or Windows 10 tablet has much more room to grow and will continue to serve you better in a wider range of situations. Regardless, the original Surface remains a milestone product for Microsoft. You can check out more details about this in our article, but for now, this has been our retro look back review here at OS Reviews. Thank you for watching. This has been the Surface One.